Greetings, guys, and welcome to today's class. I'm glad you can make it despite the state of affairs. So today's lesson will be an offshoot from our lethal survival guide. In this advanced class, we'll be going over alternative maneuvers that have a more niche application for common circumstances in State of Decay 2. Presenting with me is my apprentice junior, NTA Mascara. So, let's get...
Good day to you guys. So with these advanced tactics, they aren't exactly necessary to one's survival, but simply a way to make certain difficult situations easier to handle or tackle more proactively. But let's not hold this up any longer. Junior?
Yes, Mascara, that is correct. It is also important for us to be clear that this is not a speedrunner's workshop. So if that is what you are attending for, I'm afraid you have the wrong class. But carrying on, with my extensive studying and experiences with State of Decay 2, I've accumulated 5 advanced tactics one can employ to aid in their survivability, with some honorable mentions, of course. Now, this will not be an exhaustive list, as I'm positive some of you will have your own tactics that may be useful for the rest of the class. In which case, feel free to leave it on the discussion boards for everyone else. So, as for our first area of coverage, Infestations.
Infestations haven't appeared to change much since the Nightmare Zone, other than Screamers given the wonderful gift of Blood Plague. During our discussion at the house, you recommended one bring a crossbow and Molotovs, or fuel bombs, since they are the silent killer. What more would you recommend?
Given the extra strain on resources that comes with the lethal zone, fire isn't always the easiest thing to come by, or practical to craft. And running into a matured infestation, that being an infestation with at least 2 screamers, or double-digit Zeds, can be very dangerous for a given survivor, as they will likely create a much larger party than they initially met, if using not-so-silent means. So the alternative tactic I'd recommend for dealing with matured infestations, if there are no other means, are the throwable firecrackers.
They are relatively cheap to craft, only requiring 20 units of crafting parts. But what do you really expect to do with a distraction, other than attract more Zeds to the infestation? You might as well go in guns blazing.
Well, there are 2 outcomes one can go for. I'll call these Eviction and Contagion. With the eviction method, the tactic is simply a matter of leading the group of Zeds out of a given structure using a series of distractions. This option can be done with firecrackers or the placeable fireworks. Chances are there will be a couple of stragglers, but they should be light work. Just make sure you are efficient in eliminating the leftovers, otherwise the other Zeds can rush in and re-inflate the infestation numbers.
Seriously? Fuck yeah!
The second method, Contagion, should only be performed using firecrackers. Now, ideally, one should aim their firecracker at a cluster of Zeds or a Screamer, since they are the slowest moving targets and will likely catch a blaze. Afterwards, Zeds will be drawn to the distraction zone, and the Zeds that caught fire will spread their flames. If you're lucky, this will only take 1 firecracker, but likely 2.
Hang on, Legend. It's a well-known theme in both the Nightmare and Lethal Zone that noise is essentially your enemy. Why would one want to create extra noise and potentially inflate the infestation numbers much further? The Lethal Zone is notorious enough for blood ferals, and with those present, you might as well leave the infestation for another time.
You bring forward a valid concern, Mascara, and it is important for one to take in the state of their environment. If it is densely populated, then absolutely take care of some of the surrounding Zeds. But the implied tactic here is to keep a low profile. So even if extra Zeds become attracted to the infestation zone, they should also become set ablaze as well.
I see, London. Plus, it is important to remember that this is an advanced alternative tactic for those without the proper incendiary equipment. But, based on the demonstration, it may actually be a much cheaper and safe method, whether one chooses the Eviction or Contagion method. As an honorable mention, when dealing with surprise ferals, especially in the lethal zone, hopping on top of a car and taking headshots may also work out quite well. For those that were present during the first lethal survival guide, understanding head movement of a feral will help with minimizing ammo expenditure. Otherwise, use intermittent sprinting more often to dodge ferals instead of relying heavily on the dodge command, since plague infection can still be passed on from the contact alone.
Excellent mention, Mascara. Carrying on with our agenda, sometimes one is simply in over their head, and may find themselves quickly pursued by a massive horde of Zeds, and require a hasty escape while dying from blood plague, and just for fun, let's just say your vehicle is either destroyed or swamped, there are no ladders or low rooftops present, and you have run out of stamina stimulants and have no throwables with severe injuries.
Well, that's a mouthful.
What do you do? I'm not sure if there is already a term for this, nor have I observed it employed, not to say it isn't out there. But what one does here is what I will for now coin the human foxtrot, or foxtrot for short. This maneuver has saved me countless times, and I highly recommend its use. To perform this maneuver, one must first get a running start, no more than a few steps, and then jump. Once the survivor lands, they will perform this little stumble animation before resuming the regular sprinting animation. Just at the end of the stumbling animation, rapidly attempt to jump again, and you will be propelled forward much faster than a sprint. Once in the rhythm, this action can be repeated indefinitely.
Also, I'm noticing that even though one is moving much faster than a regular sprinting survivor, they are only using a fraction of their stamina reserves. But is this tactic really indefinite? I mean, what happens when one's stamina runs out?
Absolutely nothing. When a survivor is exhausted, severely injured, or struck with the plague, their sprinting is much slower. But the purpose of the foxtrot is to cut out the sprinting animation and simply use the momentum of jumping to propel one forward and faster than sprinting. I've been able to cover distances that allowed me to completely lose a horde of Zeds to the point that I am no longer visible. Regular sprinting will barely have the same outcome. In fact, you're more likely to attract more Zeds by just simply sprinting alone.
Quite a useful strategy, London, but I am noticing some limitations. It seems to struggle with uneven terrain, and if one is too close to a Zed, then the survivor will take that as a command to kick a nearby Zed. Also, ferals cannot be outrun using this method, and will make light work of the foxtrot.
That is correct, Mascara. If the terrain is uneven, it can throw the rhythm off and shorten the stumble animation, and there is nothing more annoying than the survivor locking onto a target instead of jumping in a preferred direction. But I would consider these to be minor concerns. The key here is survival, and this will outperform running normally, especially with blood plague and a swamped or destroyed vehicle. As for ferals, they cannot be outrun, but they can be outmaneuvered. When running or trotting in a straight line away from a feral, they will inevitably catch you with speed alone. But their predictability is their shortcoming. Every time a feral gets close when sprinting, they will lunge and attempt to tackle. All it takes is a slight change or curve in one's path, and the feral will miss without requiring one to dodge, which is a bit of a wink to the sprint more, dodge less tip.
Fair enough point, London, but I must say, those are dire circumstances you outlined earlier. At that point, one might as well try their luck of hopping in their vehicle and mowing down Zeds in reverse, if it is available, or quit the game and find a new activity.
With the trot, I would contend that position. I always prefer to go down swinging.
Carrying on, London, you also have an alternative tactic for tackling sieges. Typically, this requires having well-armed survivors and adequate fuel to get home, if one is in a remote location, correct?
Partially, but there is a way to tackle sieges remotely without having to put in any work. This one will be quick, but sometimes you're already on an important task and cannot leave a certain radius of the task area. Otherwise, the mission will fail and you may lose out on an ally. So, you either make the siege, or lose valuable ammo and miss out on a significant amount of influence. What is one to do? This one is simple. Either create an outpost, or go to one of your already created outposts and switch characters. The zombie threat at home will activate, and the countdown timer will begin.
Wait, what? Why would someone want to do this? Couldn't their survivors die, or become injured, or given the plague?
No, actually. You will hear your community on the comms as if they were in combat, but nothing is really happening at all. Wait for the timer to expire, and the prompt at the top right will instruct you to eliminate the remaining zombies, at which point you can take as long as you need. But once you get home, there will be no evidence of carnage or combat, and you will be rewarded the appropriate influence. Now, hopefully this is something that does not get fixed in the future. That is, if it is considered a bug. But for now, I would consider this a rather useful advanced tactic.
This one may be more of a common one, but still worth mentioning to anyone who may be relatively new to this subject. On to our last talking point, plague hearts. I believe you included this one due to one of your guests at the house. One of them recommended the use of an outpost created close to a plague heart.
Ah yes, this was a comment made by Swordry. Not sure if I got your name right, but this person brought forth the idea of creating an outpost close to a plague heart so that the safe zone radius covers the heart while assaulting the heart with a heavy melee weapon. Now, I have used heavy melee weapons in the Nightmare Zone despite advising against it, and with the powerhouse charge strikes, the heart can be dealt with quickly, provided one evades at the correct times. Now, with this tactic in the lethal zone, it is ideally performed in a house, where the heart is placed in a corner and allowing one to strike the heart from behind, including any Zeds that are close by. This would also involve ferals.
Ah, and the safe zone radius stops Zeds from spawning on top of you when assaulting the heart, but they will still run in the building from a distance. Regardless, using a heavy weapon can make light work of a heart. Just make sure your fighting skills are up to par. This method does not seem to be for the combatively challenged though, and it also seems to be a bit of a 2-in-1, creating an outpost and using heavy weapons against the heart.
Correct. The main downside to this method is that one will still have to evade the heart when it pulses out blood plague, but it is a doable process and perfect for those who are combatively strong but dirt poor, since it only demands stamina and a heavy melee weapon. Additionally, you'll have an outpost close by for easy looting, and won't have to worry about trunk space. While we are on this topic of plague hearts, I do have a couple corrections to make regarding our last discussion back in our wonderful neighborhood. Regarding methods for destroying plague hearts, I had outlined that with firecrackers or flares, a plague heart will require 4 units of bloater gas to eliminate one. However, there seems to be an inherent difference in the damage multiplier. Firecrackers will take 4 units of bloater gas, while flares only require 3. However, flares are not craftable, so it is not the most easily replicable method, but still worth knowing. Either that, or I just simply performed it wrong when throwing bloater gas at my firecrackers, but as far as I've been able to observe, 3 just simply does not cut it. Anyone feel free to correct me if you find something different. Lastly, for those that would prefer to adopt the drone strike method, I stated that drone activation can take as little as 9 minutes with enthusiastic morale. I unfortunately forgot to mention that one of my survivors has a quirk that increases action speeds by 33%. Otherwise, without this quirk, the fastest activation time is 15 minutes. but still, increasing morale will help with this process.
Well, that was quite a lot, but way to try and maintain consistency. Now, before we adjourn today's class, let's just recap. When dealing with infestations, use firecrackers if you don't have or use larger incendiaries. Learn to foxtrot away from Zeds. Tackle sieges remotely. Create outposts near plague hearts for slightly safer encounters. And adopt the use of heavy melee weapons to damage or kill a heart if you have the skill or minimal resources.
Excellent summation, Mascara. Thank you. Now, if there are any other points that you think could benefit the lesson, feel free to share. I am intrigued by alternatives. Otherwise, though, that is all this onion.
And this onion.
That is all these onions have to say. Thanks for attending, guys, and I'll see you in our next seminar.
Bye, guys. Happy studies.